¿Es necesario micrófono? Que no, ¿sí? ¿Es necesario? Bueno. ¿Hola? ¿Hace alguna diferencia? Ah, pues está apagado.
¿Está bien? Sí.
Buenas tardes. En nombre de Yale Club de Argentina, les agradezco la presencia, también a Andrés, el apoyo, y a Yale International Alliance. I'm going to being recorded. We have some international audience. So I will present very briefly Professor Ayres. Ayres is a teacher at Yale University, and he got JD, then he got his in economics. He's nowadays a professor at Yale Law School, Yale School of Management. Has published 100 articles. Up to now, 12, and he's hearing an upcoming book, right?
Yes.
This talk is going to be about, that book is going to be, yes. Professor Ayres is considered one of the most cited law professors. Welcome here to Buenos Aires.
Thank you very much, Guillermina. It's a great honor for Universidad Andrés to welcome Professor Ayres. And we are very thankful also to Yale Club for organizing this event. It would have been impossible to bring you down here without their help. We are truly, truly honored. It's a great pleasure to have you here. As Guillermina said, Professor Ayres is one of the leading figures in the field of law and economics, and specifically behavioral law and economics. Is that right? Fascinating field as far as I'm concerned. So really delighted to be here and to be in the position to witness directly this excellent guest. So the dynamics, as far as we have discussed, is going to be as follows. I'm going to speak for about 40 minutes, right? After that, we are going to open the floor for questions. Take probably another 20 minutes to do that. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. It's such a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to be talking about a benefit of temptation. That temptation might be used as a new kind of incentive, and that particularly that we can get people and ourselves to resist temptation. We might be able to improve our behavior. And another way to think about temptation as a resisted temptation is a sunk opportunity cost. So there's a big behavioral literature that sunk costs matter. But if I say, hey, I will offer you $100 to smoke a cigarette, you resist it, say no. When you turn it down, that resisted temptation is a sunk, not a sunk cost, but a sunk opportunity cost. You had the chance of getting $100 and you turned it down. So one way to think about this entire book is to say that sunk opportunity costs matter. They can change future behavior. And that once we appreciate that, we might want to induce sunk opportunity costs to change behavior. That's what the entire book is about. And this is a picture of some new employees at Zappos, the unicorn startup that Amazon bought for over $1 billion. And the founder of Zappos did something unusual. He started offering new employees money to quit their job. And that's really bizarre. Most people want to reduce turnover. On the face of it, paying people to quit would be increasing the amount of turnover. So why would one do this? Well, one reason is that you want to use it as a screening device. You don't want any employee that would take this money to work for you. Zappos cares a lot about consumer satisfaction, but there is another reason that you might do this. That if you offer somebody $2,000 to quit, and this was just a one-time offer. After 2 weeks of training, that bring them all together into a room like this, say today and today only, I offer you $2,000, and almost no one would accept the offer. Now, if you think about it, very few employees quit the next week because you'd feel like an idiot to quit for nothing when you turn down $2,000. So instead of increasing turnover, it's possible that resisted temptation will reduce turnover. That's the idea. It turns out that Shakespeare beat me to this idea not once but twice, and one time comes in the beginning of the St. Crispin's Day speech from Henry V, which reads, "Rather proclaim it, Westmoreland, throughout my host, that he which hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart. His passport shall be made, and crowns for convoy put to his purse." Henry V offered soldiers money, crowns for convoy, quit fighting. And maybe that could play both a screening role, but maybe also a way of increasing their willpower to working. So I'm going to talk today briefly about 2 warm-up experiments that I have done and am in the process of crunching numbers on, and then a main experiment that I'll talk a little bit more about. All of these have found some beneficial effects, some statistically significant beneficial effects of resisting temptation. This first one is in a lab experiment where we, in Zurich, where we paid subjects, offered them 25 Swiss francs, or 25 cents, for completing as many boring counting tasks as they want. We'd actually give them a large matrix of numbers and correctly count the number of times that 1 appears in this matrix. Okay? Anyone can do it, but it's tedious, right? And then experimentally, we randomly offered a subset a one-time opportunity to forego the chance to make money from counting, and instead to receive 5 francs if they were willing to give up the chance to earn money on counting. And it turns out that the tempted group is much more likely to complete 20 or more tasks. And if you think about it, once you turn down 5 francs, you have this, you've created a powerful reference point. You want to at least then make sure you go ahead and make 5 francs, right? And and in order to do that, you have to do 20 tasks. So this reference point idea, making that reference point salient, allowed the tempted group to work harder than the non-tempted group, even taking into account some people who accepted the temptation, and so got zeros, but the tempted group on average worked harder. But an interesting additional note, there are limits to this strategy. If you push the temptation from not 5, but up to 7 or 10, it backfires. Not just because more people accept the temptation, but it becomes an unreasonable reference. If it's a 10 franc temptation, then you have to do 40 incredibly tedious tasks. And it turns out that if you go a temptation of 10, the tempted subjects actually shut it down sooner, because this reference point is so powerful. When they realize they're not going to make it to 40, why even try getting to 10? So this can work, but you can't push it too far. There are limits to this, to where this will work. Another experiment, which is not in the lab, which is out in the real world, is a smoking experiment, where here, I'll just have a little side note, I have a personal beef with the human subject committees. So it turns out that it's difficult to get people to quit smoking, right? And the best smoking cessation programs still have a 40% failure rate. Even if this is 40% even for the people who successfully finish the 15-week program, that they still go back to smoking. Okay? It's an addictive chemical. So, what if we went to people after a 15-week program? You have people that have gradually reduced their smoking until, let's say, you for the last 2 weeks haven't smoked at all, and I bring it together. We have these programs usually have a celebration at the end, and I say, and I hope you don't smoke, but here I'll offer you $100 to smoke a cigarette. And my idea is, if you can turn down that one-time offer, it might help you resist temptation, because you'd feel, gosh, you turned down $100 for this, now you're going to start smoking for nothing in 2 weeks? No. That's there's just no way I could get human subject to allow me to do an experiment where I offered subjects money to smoke, right? And you guys laugh, but this is part of the problem. This is, there's a theory why this could work. We don't know whether it will work. There are even some experiments where it works on other things. And we don't have a silver bullet to this. This is something that could save lives. And I can't do the experiment because of, I think, short-sighted ethics, right? That it's actually offering people money to smoke might save lives, right? But I couldn't do that, so what did I do? I did something like the pay to quit experiment in 2 cities. Believe it or not, Kiev and New Haven. I started this project, a 2-city experiment with Natasha Tatarpova, Kiev, and we were going to offer all subjects up to $100 in abstinence rewards if they could remain abstinent for a 2-week period. This is called, in the smoking space, this is called a practice quit. For people that are just too scared to even try to quit, say, well, just try it for 2 weeks and see what it's like. So that's what I was going to do. I was going to pay them $100 if you can be abstinent for 2 weeks, and we're going to verify this with 6 CO2 tests over this 2-week period, 3 per week. But again, a random subset, I offered a one-time temptation. I'll pay you $50 not to smoke, but I'll offer you $50 if you'll give up the chance to earn $100. And my theory is that those people that turn down the $50 are going to work really hard to make sure they earn at least $50, because it's a reference point that the untempted people don't have. It's just too easy to ignore the marginal temp. And one of the interesting things about life is often the benefits, or rather each benefit of not smoking is marginal. Oh, I missed today, I missed I'll get back on the wagon. But that $50 stands out, and it turns out that the people that were offered the $50 are more likely than the untempted group to earn at least $50 from this experiment. And I'll still show my anger. Even with this result, human subjects, I bet, will not let me do a follow-up experiment where I actually pay people, what I should say, offer people money that I hope they will turn down. And so here is one way to think about, this is the most, this is kind of overstated, but what Giuseppe Gary Mattiacci, my co-author, and I, we're trying the most overstated way. This is to double our incentive tools. That people know that before this this talk, that you say, well, they're carrots and they're sticks, and carrots give you a reward for doing something. Sticks give you a contingent punishment. But they're now reactive. I want to add to that reactive carrots and reactive sticks, where you give somebody a carrot, like $100 to smoke a cigarette, but you hope that they don't comply. You hope that they are defiant, that they resist the temptation. Another version of this can come up not just with carrots, but it can come up with sticks. That, and a little bit later on, in the gym experiment, just to give you an example, is, or I'll tell you what, I'll throw in another experiment that we have done. There's an online program in Amsterdam for people with a variety of addictions, and they have a real problem with this online program that people stop using it rather quickly. And so what we have done is that we've made it harder to register. And everyone's first reaction is, gosh, it's hard to get people to do it. Make it really easy to register. Don't make it easy. We have them, they have to do 20 arbitrary, boring tasks in order to register. And having done that, they now have a bigger incentive. They have to justify having done that. And so they stay with the program. Right? And so, so this is now, but so while there are these two new ways of incentivizing people, I again want to say this is a huge overstatement, because I think there's a much narrower and still I don't think we know everything about the context where these will actually work. I've already given you one thought that you can't push them too hard. That they might very well backfire. That's the 20 franc, that's the 10 franc versus 5 franc idea. And so here's the experiment I'll be spending most time on. It's the first one that we did. It was at a university's gym. And there were two waves of subscribers, new subscribers visiting a gym. And one idea here that when I say it's limited uses, I think that it's likely to be more effective on new experiences, new employees, new gym members, than people that have been working. I wouldn't suggest you do it for law school employees after 20 years, okay? Because there may be some that take the incentive. And a little bit like the entrance here, if you want to enter the gym, there is a kiosk where you have to put your thumb down to get in. And for new users, they had to go over to a kiosk about 6 feet to the left. Oh, by the way, that's Giuseppe, at least in the back of Giuseppe's head. Took that photograph. And this is what the kiosk looked like. And in the first wave of the experiment, we did 3 different groups. A control group that was not tempted, 100% temptation group where we offered all their money back, and 110% temptation group. And this is what the screen looked like. Here's a blow up of it. Our records indicate that this is your second visit. We want to make sure that you're satisfied. You've been randomly selected to receive a one-time offer. If you act now, we'll cancel your membership and we'll refund the entire sum you plus an additional 10%. If you choose to cancel, you'll be prohibited from buying another USC membership in the next 3 months. Again, we emphasize that to receive this reward, you must act now. That's our entire treatment right here. Okay? And it's well balanced. I'm going to jump over that. Here's the simple descriptive statistics. And you can see that satisfaction did not change a great deal, but that in every one of the other outcomes, that that they lasted longer, their average visits went up, and their willingness to resubscribe went up. You can see this in another way. Here's in just about every gym experiment, people go to the gym more often initially, and then they go down over time. And what's important here is that this is the green line is on the top is the 110%. This little treatment and the control group, the untempted group, is down here at the bottom. And it seems to have had, at least over the first 16 weeks, a pronounced impact in getting people to go longer. We were so excited with the result that we did another experiment where the second wave, where we did 125% and 150% temptations. And it turns out that the 110 and the 125 did better than the 100 and the 150. And I think this could be another example of if 150 just pushed it too hard, that they realized they weren't going to be able to justify the 150%, and they tended to close it down sooner. And then here is a small example. It's actually not a very powerful identification, but it's not randomization like I used for the main study, but using a larger set of subjects. We look to see what happens if you happen to become a new subscriber in a week that had unusually bad weather. And it turns out that the people who had that bad luck, that acts as a kind of, and once they taught themselves, gosh, I went to the gym during really bad weather, it makes it easier for them to go to the gym later on. And so if you can overcome an initial obstacle, you can make it, it's possible that you might be able to use that as a reactive stick as opposed to reactive carrots. And these were highly significant but very small coefficients. And I'm about to open it up in just a few more slides to questions, but besides being an economist, I am a lawyer, and this has, I think, not just important implications for self-motivation and motivations for loved ones. My spouse is not very happy with this project because we do CrossFit workouts together, and I will sometimes, as we're driving to the gym, I will say, "Oh no, let's not go to the gym today. Let's go have breakfast at a diner." And she knows exactly what I'm doing, and I'll even start driving toward the diner until she says, "No, I want to exercise." So you, if you have someone that has a goal but is procrastinating on it, getting them to resist a temptation might be one way to do it. That's on the personal level. But what about government programs? Could government programs that we know a lot of programs that use carrots and sticks to change behavior? Could we ever use anti-carrots or anti-sticks, reactive carrots, if you will? And so here is one example with regard to mortgages. So imagine that a borrower is offered two identical mortgages at the same interest rate, annual percentage rate, APR, except one mortgage offers the borrower $1,000 in cash if she will accept if she'll accept a term that penalizes the borrower for prepayment. And if you can get people to resist the temptation of $1,000, well, they've turned down $1,000 in cash in order to preserve this option of prepaying their mortgage. I think it's possible that people that turn down the temptation to have a prepayment penalty will then feel like I better prepay part of my mortgage. It's a more valuable option having turned down $1,000. That's the idea, and this possibility. I mean, the United States has, after the housing crisis, it prohibits any mortgages being offered with prepayment penalties. But actually, if you offer mortgages with prepayment penalties, you might actually end up with an equilibrium with more prepayments if people resist this. And one of the powerful things that can be done is, so we could allow lenders to offer mortgages with prepayment penalties as long as they offer them also without prepayment penalties. And you could also say you can only offer them with prepayment penalties if only a low proportion of your clients actually take this. We do this in other circumstances. There are restaurants that say you can offer alcohol, but only if it's a small proportion of your total sales. So there's no reason, and this could also be, human subjects could, again, part of my crusade is against human subjects. You're so worried about me offering people money to smoke, I'll close down the experiment if too many people start accepting the offer. But you don't have to bet the bank on this. And by the way, in every case, if you're ever going to do this and use a reactive carrot, let me say, I promise you it will be scary. Zappos started not offering $5,000, they started offering $200 because what if everybody accepts the temptation? And they then went up to $500, $1,000, $2,000, kept going up as they got more experience. We started with lower temptations at the gym because I was personally on the hook for people that accepted that temptation. No one at the gym ever took the temptation. And so you'll be scared if you offer monetary temptations, and part of your procedure might be to shut it down if too many people take it. Another example here has to do with legal presumptions, legal default rules, and there are lots of places where we might decide to have different legal presumptions in order to induce this kind of reaction. So there is a small academic literature on sunk cost neglect. So it turns out that there's some costs all around us that we could have gone two different, we made a choice of which chair to sit in, and we just don't think about what was the one that we didn't sit in. So there are all kinds of everyone made a choice of what chair to sit in, and you don't really think about, gosh, I could have sat in that chair instead of this one. And so it's not every sunk cost, I say sunk cost, not every opportunity cost, that's what I mean, opportunity cost neglect, lots of opportunity costs we don't pay attention to. If for this you want to make opportunity costs salient, and there are various ways that the law can do that. We can have what are called affirmative choice rules, where you have to affirmatively say, no, I don't want that, I want this. And that will make the opportunity cost more salient. We might even go further than affirmative choice rules and choose a default going back to the mortgage example, so we prohibit all mortgages with prepayment. We might have a mortgage, by default, all mortgages will have prepayment, so you have to say, no, I don't want that prepayment penalty, and by making people affirmatively contract around a tempting default, we might even make this more salient, and it might have more of a behavioral effect. This idea of thinking about the salience of opportunity costs is another place where I think the law can have a big effect. And with that, let me just end with a final literary turn. The road not taken talks about, ends with a line that, two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the one less traveled by. It ends with the line, and that made all the difference. And I want to suggest that there's another possible this book gives another possible interpretation to the poem. What does that mean? Well, taking the less traveled road, that's what most people would say. Taking the less traveled road made all the difference in the Robert Frost poem. But this is a subtle difference. It's having the choice of two roads and having turned down the more traveled one may have made the difference. And the way to test this is it's possible that if there had only been the less traveled road, you wouldn't have behaved the same way. Your life would have ended up different. It's the fact that you turned down, that you had the sunk opportunity cost, that taught you something about yourself, that increased your resilience to temptation, and it's the turning down that has made all the difference. Thank you very much. Questions, comments? And could you could you call on people for me? Thank you. I bored you all. Nothing.
How do you get started? I mean, what brought you from law, not only to economics, but to this kind of behavioral economics?
Yes. Well, I don't. I know the beginning of an idea, but I think, I guess what happened here is I read about the Zappos example. And by the way, Amazon has continued to do this, and they do it to all their employees now. And I just wanted to think about, like, what could be going on here besides screening. And I just kept, I kept noodling around with it, and one thing led to another, and very slowly have developed this theory behind it. So I should say, just reading the newspaper and paying attention to articles that somehow cause a tingle. That's what got me going. And I guess one of the things that I see, often we think of sunk cost fallacy as being a bad thing, that we want to be super rational. Here is, so I guess I was also attracted to the idea that that sunk opportunity cost might be something that was good for the world, could be used. One of the things that I guess I also like about it is that there's a lot of behavioral nudging, which is seems to that people are concerned about it being manipulative and undisclosed. And what's beautiful about a lot of these reactive carrots is that you can be very you can be incredibly open about, I hope that you quit smoking. I want you to quit. And I'm going to give you this offer that I hope you will reject, and that people who reject it tend to have more resilience. You can tell them all that and it can still work. Indeed, it might actually make it more powerful, explaining the theory, whereas a lot of behavioral economics, you have to hide the theory from them. And so I think I was attracted to it because it scores well on transparency.
Well, thank you very much. I really like the presentation. There is a literature that you probably know in economics that use the same ideas in the building of moral capital. And they use this idea that you want people in society to resist real temptations, and then you build institutions that in early childhood or early adulthood you make fake temptations, and when you resist these fake temptations that are easily to resist, then you build moral capital, and then you are less likely you are more likely to resist a real temptation later in life.
First, please send me that because I know a little literature like that, but I'd love to, if you know other literatures, please.
Well, actually, I have a paper on that that is forthcoming, but I'm really happy to share. But it's exactly the same. It's exactly it's isomorphic idea. Yeah, what you're doing, but it's more like building of institutions in society for people to behave correctly later in life.
One of the more mysterious verbs, English language to me, is inculcate. That all parents are supposed to inculcate certain values in their children, and I think we have very little. Besides this, I don't think we have much ideas. You tell them the idea, you model it. I don't know why those are persuasive at all. Just telling people you should not kill. At any rate, so this actually puts some an actual theory of inculcation and this could just to give you I just spent 3 weeks in India, and there's some issues of public corruption there, and so it might. This is a theory that suggests we might offer lower, small temptations to initial officials to accept small bribes. And if they can resist the small bribe and teach themselves, I'm not the kind of public official that accepts a bribe, maybe when they become vice president, they also don't accept it.
This is exactly going to show the paper.
I'd like to know how these reactive incentives interact with incentives, traditional incentives.
What kind of incentive?
Yeah, I'd like to know how they
Traditional?
interact with traditional incentives. And I'll give you an example because I am probably mostly thinking in criminal law, where we have a structure of progressive incentives, and this would be also understood as reactive incentives conversely in a way. So the example would be, let's say we have a law that tries to incentivize people to rectify their previous tax filings because they haven't evading taxes. So you have, the law says if you rectify and pay what you owe, you would only pay 3% of whatever you rectify. Then if you do it, then after 2 months you pay 5%, and if you do it in 4 months you pay 10%. And this 10% would be also.
And these are penalties you pay back plus 3%.
It's like you pay more every time. So the law wants to say come quickly. And this is exactly the same structure, for instance, in when you have a criminal attempt. So it says if you stop the crime now, you have no punishment. If you continue, you have the full punishment. So this is an sunk opportunity cost at the same time.
That's really interesting. So there is this, so this marginal deterrence idea of having additional penalties at each additional stage, that is, and anyone that goes who turns down the 3% offer, it's a, there is a, sadly, it seems to me it's working in the wrong direction there, because now it is, having turned this down, I'm now the kind of criminal that turns down 3%. Maybe it makes them more likely than to turn down the 6 and the 9%. So first of all, I love that. I love this example, and I'm just trying. I haven't thought of it before. I'm just trying to think: is there a way of flipping it around to get a beneficial sunk opportunity cost, which is more like your story than this. It's almost like, yeah, so it is like accepting, doubling down each time along the way. So I don't have a way of, I haven't thought about this particular sequential incentive, but there are, let me just go back. I don't think I have a further example here, but at least I can play out something else that, we go back to this, this chart. There's an interesting idea about, there's a kind of a connection between the diagonals, and that in traditional, with traditional incentives, the thing about sticks, including criminal law, is that if it works, you don't ever have to use them, because it's just the threat of the stick, and so you don't have to actually have a prison. You don't have to spend money on the stick if it actually deters. The better the stick works, the cheaper it is, whereas the better the carrot works, the more expensive it is, because you have to pay everybody the carrot. Well, the beautiful thing, if you think about this, reactive carrot is like the stick in the sense that no one accepted the temptation at the gym. It's like the threat of prison that you never have to follow through on. I never had to pay any of my family's money to the gym goers, whereas a reactive stick is you actually have to, if it works, people are going to, you have to go and proctor all those needless registration areas. So there is a, this is still not a good answer to your great question, but there are interesting ways to combine these together, and in fact, in two of the experiments, of course, I'm trying to use a temptation to get people to give up a traditional carrot. So I'm trying to think about ways that these can be combined in.
Yeah.
Sí.
Thank you, Professor, for your right insight. Two things. The first one is when we try to set our behavioral tools, or in the classroom, we used to think about the traditional regulatory tools as 6 carrots, information, and that's it. Well, we can help with our behavioral tools for better regulation. But it's difficult because that you talk to us. How you can think about the anti-sticks or the reactive carrots? Are there traditional tools? Are there behavioral tools? That's the first question. The second one is, what implications are you thinking? Talk about the corruption issue, very interesting. The other things that raise many ethical questions about smoking, but which other policy implications have you thought about your
Right. So let me start with the second part. One of the things I'm still trying to work out are what are the circumstances where these reactive incentives are most likely to be effective. And so one of the thoughts is I think they're more likely to be effective when the target of the incentive actually wants to do the thing, but is, for other behavioral reasons, is not able to do it. They want to go to the gym, they want to quit smoking, they want to stay on the job, maybe. But I could still see, but I open up the possibility that even things that they don't really care as much about, they still might be effective, and but you have to worry about another big issue is how to engineer the context of the temptation to make it that people resist it. And one of the things that I have varied in the various contexts is some of my temptations have been group temptations. That's Zappos does whereas the gym is a single temptation. So let's imagine you really don't care about recycling. And so you'd think, well, that's not something you really want to do, but you forget to do it. And so if I just offered you $100 not to recycle, you just take the $100. But imagine I bring your apartment building together, and it's a group meeting, and then in front of your neighbors, are you going to take the $100? And even if it's if you resist the temptation, not because you really care about recycling, but you don't want to look like a jerk, it still might have an effect because you turned down $100, and that might be the thing in your mind that gets you on board. But I'm not sure, and we'd have to figure out what are the in the gym experiment. Even though it wasn't a group idea, I knew that people are excited at the beginning of a membership, and they got themselves out of bed and they put their clothes on and they got into the gym, and just when they were about to enter, I stopped them and I tipped them, and there was so much forward momentum, figuratively, that they all resisted the money. So I think there are things we can do to impact whether people resist the temptation, so I think people that don't have as much experience, it's more likely to work. People that actually care about the goal that the policymaker wants, that's more likely to work. I've thought about this could help people, and so we could just go through what are the big areas where nudging behavioral economics has pushed on, and these are issues about where there is hyperbolic discounting, where you it's not just your diet or your smoking, but whether you save adequately on your financial issues, where it's today's decisions impact the future. So I've thought that this might help keep kids in school. Whether they like it or not, but I think a lot of kids, at least part of them, want to stay, at least there's a real problem in some of our public universities of people dropping out after a semester or so. And could we imagine using a reactive carrot? And I do think that we're just at the beginning of a possibility here. I don't think there is a theory that might work. There's a few experiments where it works, but I would suggest that anybody just use it provisionally and experimentally and see if it works in context. Hit me up again on that first question, because what was that?
Can you classify reactive sticks and carrots, traditional, regulatory, are they behavioral?
I think they're behavioral, and but they're non-manipulative behavioral, in the sense that you can tell people what you're doing and why you're doing it. So yes, all incentives are trying to change behavior, but at least these are telling, can be used to speak their name. And this could also go with regard to the reactive sticks that I have made boot camp unreasonably hard, because I think if you can make it through boot camp, you're more likely to stay on the to be an effective force in the Army. So quit if you want, but if you can make it through Hell Week, you can explain to them why you're doing this. And I think that is, and I haven't done it yet, but we could also experiment on whether telling people why you're doing it, that increase or undermine or not have any effect on the treatment effect.
Professor Winograd?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for. Well, you, as I say, you motivate a lot of directions. And related to one of the commands, that the institutional structure and the possibility of replicating the incentive structure you're proposing by cultural institutions or cultural peer pressure elements, like one could call certain elements of Protestant ethic societies that connect with peer pressure and explain some behavior that is in the Scandinavian societies, and that saves a lot of money in the incentive mechanism. Say, replicate without cost, peer pressure, and people internalize it. There is a literature on cultural transmission that is interesting. Connect to this, the Bizine-Verdier literature, which is very interesting, that can help connect these two issues. Then, what one gathers in future things, some of these mechanisms are strongly discontinued. Discontinued.
Yeah.
They work, and you see a
Yes.
lot of non-linearities
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So you see that the derivatives may invert
Yeah.
depending on the stage of the game.
Yes.
And so that makes it very hard to calibrate the mechanism design. And the optimal design for policy turns into an extremely tricky and sensitive thing that may have a lot of boomerang effects embedded. The second question is, take one example, the addiction game that you told.
Yeah.
I'm no incumbent in this literature. Maybe I'm saying stupid. So, forgive me. But if you take the incumbent, you have two dimensions. The increase in the barriers to entry in the addiction treatment reduces the entrance on the one hand and increases the compliance of the entrants that are there. What is your objective will determine if this is a good tool or not. If I want to maximize the number of entrants, it's not very good. It depends on the resilience on the entrance. It means the compliance effects. You have two opposite effects, and the reduced form of that game is not obvious.
Yeah.
So I understand the mechanism, but the policymaker, what does he do?
These are great set of comments and questions.
Again, not over.
Oh, can I? My memory is short, so let me just start with these, and then you can. I really want to keep hearing. Okay. So first of all, in some contexts, you're going to care about all the people, whether or not they accept the temptation or not. And so, like smoking, I care about the people who take the $100 and smoke a cigarette, and as in experimental terms, I think it's important to adopt tend to treat standard, where on average doesn't do better. But there are other contexts, such as employment. If there's a lot of unemployed people, you may not care about the people who accept the quick temptation to quit, and you may just care, but of those people that stay on, they're going to work harder, because I can always get more people to come in. So sometimes I care about everybody, including the tempted. Some people I just care about the untempted, and it's going to depend. Your earlier point too is a very strong criticism of this entire project. Is it may just be incredibly sensitive and shifting to social norms, and it may be fleeting. That it works on new people, but after 15 weeks, and it's just not worth the candle. Even if it works, it's just too costly to find out and to calibrate for something that is so short-lived. So this is at best a theoretical possibility with a little bit of empiricism. It's just a new idea that I'm trying to explore. But let me throw in, besides corruption, it might make sense to have small temptations to get students to cheat, small temptations to get. I've thought about. And this would be another way, going back to your nice idea how it combines with traditional things. So real estate agents are not supposed to discriminate on the basis of. What if you have someone go in as a landlord and say, hey, real estate agent, I just don't like dealing with, I don't want to have tenants that are this group. Will you make sure I don't get, will you discriminate for me? And if you can get them to resist the temptation, maybe a small temptation, maybe that will set them, and if they don't resist the temptation, what if you punish them for breaking the law? We tend in the United States to have fair housing testing where we send in people to be, or two people to be renters, one black and one white, but we don't ever test the other side of the market to send in a landlord and say, will you discriminate for me? And so this opens up a possibility. So it may not be worth the candle. It may backfire, might be able to combine it with punishments, I don't know. But my intuition, I still want to think more about this, is that maybe by punishing it reduces the power of you're resisting it because of the punishment effect threat, as opposed to teaching yourself about who you are. But anyway, I cut you off, but I wanted to just make sure I could respond to those two parts. And you have more? Please.
The same example to something that is very important this way is entrance exams are a good university, are a good type of reactive mechanism. The number of people that will come in may be lower, but the aspirational impact is behind the story may be higher. That will be another way to rethink out of your structure the role, the incentive role of entrance exams for schools, universities, etc. on a practical case.
And I just to say, and people understand how they serve a screening function so that you have better people that get past them. But the fact that it also may have a motivational function, so they work harder, having lived through that process, is the new thing that I'm trying to bring to the. That's a great idea.
Another one is that we are thinking about screening devices between principal and an agent,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Typically.
Yes.
I don't know if this exists in the literature, but if we introduce some cognitive dissonance game, maybe this is also a screening device for oneself.
Oh yes.
Because there is a sort of revealed preference that the person discovers and you serve the process of bridging the cognitive dissonance, and then it learns, and the learning process leads you to a better outcome.
Yeah.
That I was thinking about that when I was hearing you. We tend to think about principal agent, but maybe I am a principal myself if there is dissonance.
Yeah. So, I think in the, one of the things that is.
Excuse me, could you explain what dissonance is? Because the rest of it, I missed it, I don't know what you're saying. Maybe you can explain it.
Sure. Dissonance is having taken one action, you have to, having turned down the $100 to smoke a cigarette. If the next day you smoke a cigarette, you have to say, what kind of person am I that these are two inconsistent actions? And so if you have, so dissonance, one version of dissonance is trying to commensurate inconsistent action. You have a reluctance to act inconsistently. And a simple dissonance, simple and powerful dissonance theory is one of the things that could be going on here. Benabou has a theory of self-signaling that you tell this becomes a salient part of your self-history that you can then refer to again and again. I turned down this small piece of corruption. That's who I am, and so the many economists, of course, write down mathematical models for what psychologists have known for decades, and that's happening here. So that's a self-signaling is what Benabou calls it. Dissonance. The one thing that there's also a psychological literature on reactance, and this is you mentioned boomerang effects. So reactance theory of psychologists is the Montagues say, hey, you can't date Romeo, and that's who you're going to want to date, right? But one of the things about reactance theory, and there's actually empiricism on this, is the agent is angry, and they have heightened blood pressure and dilated eyes. And what you saw in my gym experiment, satisfaction didn't, the tempted group wasn't less satisfied with the gym. So I don't think reactance works, or this angry at your parents for saying, whatever you do, don't do X. That's a different idea than this dissonance or self-signaling. But which I'm trying to add to by saying you can really, I think it's still a kind of a dissonant story, but make it a powerful reference point that they can then measure themselves against. I started out doing this gym experiment. It's not a very powerful reference point, having turned down 100 euros. How many times do you have to go to the gym? It's not as clear as when you turn down 5 francs. Better make 5 francs. So that's another, as to where it would work, have it be a more apples to apples reference point would be one of the thoughts. Yeah. Mr. Moore?
I was about to ask you another question, but first, maybe legal entrapment.
Yes.
Interesting.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And it's interesting because legal entrapment was advice for, but in the civil law tradition.
Well, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe so having systems of having a project of entrapment, not to actually find people that break the law, but to steal them against.
So legal entrapment without time.
Yeah, that might even be better than having it with, which is going to. Again, to my discrimination idea, it might be more powerful not to have. That's a great idea.
But the other is the poem. I think it works not only because because of the path not taken, but also because work, the play, and mortal state. Play with mortal state.
It is, huh? The very last line is, and that has made all the difference.
Yeah, but it
Before
says,
that,
only when love and need are one, and work is play for mortal states, the deep done.
oh, interesting.
Is it ever truly done?
Huh.
So, but that's the two parts of work.
Yes,
Because first you want to create an environment where people are playing mortal states. If they don't care, you cannot, right?
Mhm.
And then give them a path to take.
Great.
A difficult path to take.
Well,
But if you don't have the first, you cannot have the other one.
great. Well, you give me a great opportunity. This mortal stakes. The other, I said Shakespeare beat me to this idea twice. The other time was definitely mortal stakes. So, does anybody know Richard III? So, after, suddenly can't remember. Richard III, was ever a woman thus wooed? Was ever a woman thus won? Is the famous line. Well, what does that come from? After he kills the father-in-law and husband of a woman, while he's standing over the corpse with her, he tries to seduce the widow. And she says, she's disgusted, I want to kill you. And what Richard III does? He says, here is a dagger, kill me. And she resists the temptation to kill him. And he then says, oh, well, there must be a place in it. And by the end of the scene, she is his. And he then says, so Shakespeare at least believed that reactive carrots could impact behavior.
If they free ride on culture of nation and play for mistakes, because nobody cares.
Yes. So
Because
then talk
nobody
about
cares.
moral state. Oh, that's great. Oh, and would you please send me that a citation to that? You mentioned a literature that I don't really know on cultural. Yes, I'd love to know that. And for people, I was also beaten to this by a more contemporary play in the 1960s. There was something called Raisin in the Sun. Sidney Poitier plays in the movie and made well, where African American family has entered into a contract to buy a house in a white neighborhood, and the white neighborhood association says, we'll give you back all your down payment plus some extra money if you don't come. And Sidney Poitier turns down the offer, and this is what Mother said he became a man today by resisting the discrimination, to collaborate race discrimination.
Please. Question myself. I was thinking about the entrapment example. And on the one hand, you can think that the person who resists the temptation will be more likely to abide by the law subsequently. But at the same time, there's some literature, if I understand my colleagues correctly, that suggests that once you break the law, once you cross a certain barrier, then you're more likely to cross it again, right?
Yes.
Especially if you do that at a certain point in your life. And
Yeah.
so maybe this goes back to the discontinuity point, right? It's very difficult to adjust intervention to make it really work, right?
Yes, but I would say though that my gym experiment, I had it programmed in that it would shut down if too many people accepted. If you have an entrapment program, you shut it down if too many people accept the offer to do this. So yes, it can have, it can be a gateway to more crime, and but this would be a place where I think about the econometrically about intent to treat. I care about the overall effect on crime, and if it's a small proportion that accept the temptation, and they go on to do worse crime, even kill people, it may still be a good thing to do if the other people don't commit as much crime. Give you another literary example where I'm very different than the Human Subject Committee. Stephen King has a short story called Quitters, where people are trying to quit smoking, and it's run, Quitters Incorporated is run by the mob, and they have escalating punishments, not 3 to 6%, but they start hurting you, breaking arms, cutting off fingers, and ultimately killing you if you keep smoking. Okay? This may save lives, even if some people get killed. Now, you guys laugh. I am not laughing. This is a serious moral issue. And I drive a Tesla, which may save lives, even if it is responsible for killing some people. I care about, this is in smoking and in driving, I care about the overall death rate.
Does the ends justify the means?
Well, if there is transparent consent, now in Quitters, there wasn't good consent. But yeah, I think people should have the right, and I should say, talking about Quitters, I am a co-founder of a for-profit website called stick.com, where people have put more than $50 million of their money at risk to stick to their goals. And they can lose substantial amounts of money if they continue to smoke. So this is a traditional stick incentive site. And yes, people who want to enter into risky contracts, I favor that with enough consent.
More questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Well, but again, What's your research on?
Pero
puedes bajar a una solución que ayuda a que alguien hay una paradoja.
It's all right for God to use it. No, but it's the devil. You asked it first. And so,
hay gente que pone el mismo modelo y el foco en yo pongo el foco el modelo es lo que es en el foco es la tendencia. Yo lo que muestro es Luego saca 2.95, está súper acabas 300, la súper pero acabas 800, vas adentro, acabas 60, ya vas al bajo. Eso es un sorteo. Entonces ahí tenés básicamente una temptation que llega random. A uno te llegó y a mí no. Entonces a uno le llega y a otro no. Es un sorteo. Y después lo que me fijo que tengo es para todos los campos. Inicio de campo. Y después me preguntan si lo vas a hacer. Yo muestro que no ahí más trabajo se toma, es más fácil hacer. Es la misma cosa, porque si vos te recibís que hacer tal país, después lo que es más probable que es la misma forma. Empezó a valer ahora nosotros decimos que nosotros estamos testeando con quién se recibió y quién no se recibió. No, sí. Con la real data, real situation. Eso es lo primero que se pasó. Decía Tito que no,
Bueno, pero entrar es que tiene cierto lag en entrar.
Porque yo la agarré por el lado del crossing de la misma lógica. Pero él no. Sí, lo que él está diciendo es cómo comunicar. Entonces, la lógica es el tension que es súper fácil es una sociedad. Porque eso te capital moral que después hace que la misma temptation por la resistencia. No sé si se entendió.
No,
yo no sabía no sabía que eso le vos que se sugiere que la gente necesita la vida. No, pero no sabía que es con fake temptations para que después vos necesitas tenés que tomar el té a las 5 de la tarde y tenés que hacer un buen samaritano. Sí, interesante. Tenés que comer como una hoja. Un pancito.
Son chips.
Los rituales.
Son chips.
Son los rituales, ¿no? Como el valor que tienen los rituales para construir capital moral para que vos resistas la vida perfecta. Que si no puedo explicar, yo pensé que no, me pareció que no se decía.
Por eso se habla de toda la cultura camisa, del siglo X, todo eso.
Igual hecho un loco, lo que pasa es que él fue al fondo de dónde está, es una moneda que él hablo explícitamente, uso la palabra en el paper, uso persiste temptation. Uso la palabra, la frase persiste temptation uso varias veces. Solo que yo la agarré por el lado de si no resiste, y él todo el foco lo puso sí resiste. Pero es lo mismo. Muy interesante.
No, entendí que idea general de repente que no conocía el ejemplo en particular de la religión y todo. No sé qué está haciendo.
Sí, sí, dale, perfecto.
Oh, great.
I really enjoy it.
Thank you.
I'm working on that. I have a paper for accounting that was accepted 3 days ago in Yale.
This is great. So, yeah, you're preempting me.
Because I'm doing like testing,
Lucas, te pido perdón, pero tengo que tener que ir.
Sí, no te preocupes.
temprano, ¿viste? Ahí está el jefe, Sandra, ¿viste? No, todos. Todos. Así que ya te puedo decir.